Hi, hi, hi. Lord Jesus help us all, because between Tony and Cody in this episode, I don't know who's worse. I probably have an opinion on that, but frankly, it doesn't really matter. Hi, if you're new here, my name's Cozy. I like to talk about sister wives and related reality television shows here on YouTube. I do like to remind you these videos are for entertainment purposes only. These are not facts, they're just opinions that I have about public figures sharing their lives on television. So if that's cool, we're cool. So this is going up a little bit late. I was back in the emergency room because I thought I was having an issue with my shunt. As it turns out, no, I was having a migraine that just got a little froggy. So we're doing pretty good, but as I turn my head, you might actually be able to see the line. I don't know what's going on with it today. It's just a little tight, so we're going to see how this goes. Listen, y'all, I anticipated that most of this episode was going to be entirely filler, other than the Cody Mary fight, and I was super surprised, and pleasantly so, to see that I actually was engaging with the content a lot more than I thought. Because, of course, we're going to start out with Christmas at Robin's house, and she's the only one who's expressing that she's upset at all about the circumstances. Cody, on the other hand, is just beaming from ear to ear when he says this is his first Christmas with just one wife and her children. Okay, well, you only had Mary last Christmas, and you said you didn't consider yourself married to her, so I don't know. He's giddy in the voiceover as he's talking about opening presents. And then he says he's just doing his best to be happy about it. And considering you are very obviously happy about it, good job. I mean, he just keeps saying over and over again he has to really engage the family, which is just another phrase that I think is forever ruined for me. Robin is significantly more honest when she says that this is not her first Christmas without everyone, but it is her first Christmas without Mary. And she's talking about how there's so much unwrapped here. And at first, I thought that this was like a Christmas pun about the unraveling of the family. No, it's just sort of moving on to bragging about Christmas presents, I guess. Robin says, that's Cody. And again, I thought, oh, since we're talking about the family, dang, she's going to tell us like it is. No, we're just laughing about the actual gift wrapping. Cody says that Robin likes to wrap the presents, and she can come wrap them at my house and take her all of like 15 minutes. Cody's like, I'm usually in the way of the work, so know thyself. Over in Salt Lake, Christine's also having a fairly small Christmas, just the married kiddos, the babies, Truly, and Isabel. And it sounds like a really nice, quiet morning to me, honestly. We have our Christmas for the 5 of us here in the morning before we go over to my parents for the utter chaos that is my niece and children all put together. There's not enough coffee to prepare for it, if I'm being honest. It is chaotic. Avalon, though, in that little dino suit is just killing me. I think all the kids in our family need them, because like 5 little dinos running around, honest to goodness, I'm actually starting to think that the dogs might need them too. Isabel gets this bobblehead for Christmas, right? And I'm stumped. I have no clue who this bobblehead is. She says she's obsessed with it, and I've rewound it a few times and paused it. I feel like I'm missing some massive joke. If you know who the bobblehead is, please help me. I don't get it. McKelty doesn't feel like it's Christmas because there's no chaos, and I can see how this would be strange. She's like, I'm trying to get used to being an adult without the Christmases I grew up with. Also difficult. I'm with you there. So she says, the plan today is just to hang out and play with babies. No. The plan today is to have Christmas with your family. And I'm gonna say this, and it's twin mom to twin mom, okay? It's gonna sound harsh. The plan is not always to play with the babies. That was your Thanksgiving plan, now it is your Christmas plan. Every holiday cannot simply be focused around these 2 babies, McKelty. And it sounds harsh. I know that it does. Just coming from experience, other family members exist and need attention. And, Truly's still a kid too. We get Janelle over at Maddie's, and she's explaining that Maddie and Caleb continue a lot of the Christmas traditions, including going to see the lights. And this year she thought it'd be super fun to be where the grandkids are. Axel gets this giant train set that even I'm jealous of. And then we hop on over, and Mary is in Salt Lake City with her friends. I don't think we've seen them before. Amber and Lisa. Lisa used to be Mary's babysitter back in the day. And she says she's known Amber almost her whole life. I get the vibe Amber is Lisa's daughter. I'm not sure though. She reminds us that she and Cody made the decision to split, and so in absolutely no way, shape, or form is she going to go spend Christmas with he and Robin. She's like, why would I do that? It doesn't make sense. It's not happening. I don't want to be the third wheel. And the ladies back in the scene, are giggling about this bright future ahead. And Mary continues to tell us, I just want to be where people want me. Janelle does admit it's been a relaxing holiday, but also a weird holiday. She became very aware when it was time to make the food that Janelle wasn't always in the kitchen. And so this idea that suddenly she needed to look up a recipe and try to remember how everyone else made it just kind of hit her hard. But the day was good regardless. McKelty shares that it was the little things that each parent brought into the family that added to the traditions of the holidays. But it's gone now because the dynamic looks different. It isn't. You take the traditions that you want to keep and you keep them. Robin says the best part of her Christmas was her children had a good day. And so for their sake, she needs to focus on the good. So that's what she did. Janelle thinks this is probably the new norm, and that's okay. And Mary loved Christmas. She loves Christmas. She loved the years they spent together. She loved the memories that they created. But people have evolved, and they don't do the same things anymore. And she's okay with it and recognizes that there's no way to tell what each year is going to bring. And she assumes that each year will bring something different. And I think for Mary, that's probably true. Mary seems to travel around more and go visit lots of different people. I think maybe for Janelle, it's probably going to be a lot of hanging out with Maddie, Caleb, and the kids. And I think for Christine, it'll just be being in Salt Lake with her husband and her children and enjoying their time together. Then, very suddenly, Aspen, who is my husband and I's absolute favorite voice of reason, is here to tell us about Christine's dating life. Rather, that they were aware she was dating, but she didn't actually talk a lot about it. So when Christine began talking a lot about one man that she went on a date with, it was a noticeable change. And while Aspen is super excited for Christine to date because she never has done it before, it's a little nerve-wracking. She does say, she liked my dad and they got married. And based off of what we've read in the book, yeah, that's pretty much exactly how that went. So this is really Christine's first experience with dating. And so Christine does say it's been about 6 months. And she's just been going on 1 or 2 dates with different people. And she does mention that one guy was very religious and she does not know how they even matched. She's like, yeah, I was a polygamist. And then it was definitely over. And she says another time, it was actually kind of sad. She was on a second date. And once again, she mentioned polygamy. And he'd never heard of it. And that ended things there. It was the moment that she realized that some people take polygamy very seriously. Mary's like, listen, I'm almost 52, and the idea of dating is super weird. Plus the factor of being in a plural family for over 30 years, she's assuming that men are just going to assume that's what she's into. And so I think it feels safe to say Mary does not seem interested in another plural marriage. Janelle mentions that Christine hired a matchmaker, and she doesn't know if she's actually found anyone. But for Janelle, she's going to need an organic connection. She's not interested in those dating apps. I don't know why, but I found that line flub so absolutely funny to me. She said, dating apes, and I just giggled. I cannot stop picturing like a little chimpanzee with a rose going to another. Those are monkeys. If it doesn't have a tail, it's not a monkey. Yeah, that's how that song goes. At any rate, Mary does hope that Christine finds someone new, because if that's how moving on looks to her, then all good. Cody said his life is separate and private from Christine's. Right. And he expects she'd be dating, but it's none of his business. It's only his business once it begins to evolve truly. He's right. Christine was nervous to begin this dating process, but she wanted to date. And she reminds us that when she left Cody, she felt like she was looking for a bald, tattooed motorcycle man. And, just something so different from before. It's awkward as the girls begin asking, do you want to talk before Truly gets here? And McKelty's like, is there anything you need to tell us before Truly gets here? And Christine counters with basically the same thing. And then McKelty asks Tony, stop. Enough. Christine's like, okay, so what were your first impressions of David? There. McKelty liked him. Tony was like, that was the most unsmooth transition ever. Who cares? Honestly, Christine tells us that David's her boyfriend. And mind you, the talking heads were probably shot well after the wedding, if I had to guess. So we already know how they met. We already know a lot about them. But on the second date, she did tell him everything. And since he knew about polygamy, she had to make sure that he didn't want to live polygamy. So she asked the kids the question the second time. And Kelty says, listen, I let him hold my kid. That says a lot. I don't really let everybody hold my babies. Tony says, David was pretty good. And he was pretty good with the kids, which, he has 8 of them. But Tony says he liked how David survived. And then things get kind of quiet and awkward for a second while everyone's pausing, trying to understand. And Christine's like, oh, you mean when his wife passed? And Tony clarifies that, yeah, his wife died and left him with 8 kids. And Christine's like, the youngest was 6, which breaks my heart because my babies are 5. Whew. Tony continues, well, he didn't get addicted to drugs and gambling, and he made it out with decent kids. Perhaps I'm naive. And pardon my ignorance on the matter, but I don't personally know anyone who got addicted to gambling or drugs after losing a spouse. Is this a more common issue? Am I missing something? Christine gives us the backstory that David has 8 kids, 10 grandkids, and it's been 11 years since his wife passed. Back in the living room, Peyton, Isabel, and Truly have finally joined up, and Christine's like, hey, you can go sit by Mitch to Peyton, but Peyton is already halfway to the chair that he was about to sit in anyway. In the talking head, Christine's like, it's been a month of dating David, and it just feels right. So she's telling her kids she's 50, and she knows what she wants. She feels like she's dated enough guys in the last year to know what she's looking for. And Tony's like, you have? Christine reveals it's been about 8 guys, and she feels like that's a lot. And Tony McKelty are like, no, that's not enough. With Tony saying it's not double digits. I don't know. She is 50, and frankly, she's had a lot of life experience. She probably does know what she's looking for. McKelty puts Truly on the spot, asking for an honest answer, and she keeps pushing before Truly's finally like, what's the question? And she's like, I like David. He's funny. We get along. Mitch also likes him. But then Tony has to say, I mean, he always makes sure he says the dumbest thing in the room, right? He reminds me of Cody. And someone yells out, oh, fun. Genuinely not sure if it was Mitch or Peyton. I lean toward Peyton, though. McKelty's like, you have to explain that. No. Please don't. But he insists, well, it's because he says boomer stuff that Tony doesn't understand. Firstly, David is a boomer. Cody is not. Secondly, you're making millennials look bad. And frankly, Zoidberg meme, you should feel bad. Just because you're not well-versed in speaking to others doesn't mean that Cody and David are alike. You know who is, though? You and Cody. So we have to argue about who's a boomer and who's not. And there's this whole discussion about the fact that David's 59, Christine's 50. And Aspen says, oh, because you guys are the same, right? And everybody's like, whoa, no. And she's like, no, not how old you are. I know how old you are. You're in the same generation. But Tony's like, well, that's some Cold War stuff, man. I hate everything. I was born during the Cold War. Tony was born 3 years after the fall of the Soviet Union. And now I'm rolling my eyes and like, please, whatever you're watching on the internet that is making you dumber, please stop. Talk to real people. I mean, I know I'm being mean. Jesus forgive me. I know I'm not being very kind. But I am having a trouble with this boomer, I don't know, whole thing. It makes Tony look foolish, in my opinion. And I'm with Aspen when she asked, do you even know when the Cold War was? And I do. It ended December 3rd, 1989 at the Malta Summit, where George H.W. Bush and Gorbachev declared it over. Now, of course, the reunification of Germany the following year and the fall of the Soviet Union in December of 1991 are really often pointed to, like, the actual end of the Cold War. Boom. Just open up a book. I mean, I'm sorry. You could easily argue, I guess, that it never ended as tensions have escalated a lot in the last several years. So, I mean, like, it just keeps getting worse the more I think about what he said. And I'm sorry, I bet you didn't think, oh, I'm going to get a history lesson in this stupid Sister Wives review. And I am truly sorry for that. It made me so crazy. Janelle says she doesn't think that she's a boomer, and David's only 5 years older than her. But, you know, generations are kind of wonky. Like, I think generations have stages, because I view myself as an elder millennial, right? And then there's the 90s babies, the kids who were born literally in the early 90s. And then the baby millennials who were born way too close to Y2K to even, like, remember the panic. Christine argues she's not a boomer because her mom's a boomer. And then the producers are like, technically David's a boomer. And she starts giggling about the fact that her mom and David are in the same generation. But when I asked, Mary just knows the 80s are her jam. And she loved the 80s. Cody comes in and is like, Gen X is the feral generation. Normally I'd be like, yeah, probably. But Tony's annoyed me into Cody annoying me, and so now I'm just willing to disagree with anything. He says as a teenager in the 80s, you had music videos and fashion. He doesn't really elaborate there. And then says so many amazing things happened in the 80s. And then goes, Duran Duran happened in the 80s. That was not everything, but yes. So back with her kids, Christine clarifies that David was 58 when they started dating, but has had a birthday since then. And McKelty's like, well, you can keep teasing him more when he turns 60, if you guys are still together. Of course, Christine asserts they will, and we live in the future, so we know that, yeah, they were married by that point, I think. The first date, Christine knew this was something she wanted to invest her time in, but also knows that this is too soon for some of her kids. And it's important to her to know how they feel about David, but their feelings are not going to end her relationship. Christine points out Isabel has taken this the hardest of all her kids, and so she gives her the floor to react. And Isabel's like, I'm not taking it hard, I'm just moving slower. But Tony has to argue that, yes, you are. Isabel shuts it down with an anyways, which good for you. Thank you. Do not engage that silliness. She does admit she's moving slower, and Tony's, I'm sorry, she does admit that she's moving slower, but Christine thinks, well, I think you're just more protective of your mother. And in a talking head, Isabel does open up, and she's like, I've only ever known my mom married to my dad. And so, yeah, I'm happy for her, but this is strange. So we're back with the group, and Isabel's like, yeah, you're just moving so fast. McKelty has to butt in and say, well, I proposed to Tony before 2 months. And Isabel very gently but firmly shuts her down with, I'm not talking about you right now. I'm talking about Mom. And I actually love it. Like, that was a very polite way to point out this is not the conversation. Aspen's back with her talking head to say it is fast and some siblings are taking it harder than others. And Cody tells us, well, if Christine is wanting to date, then she should have been dating whenever she felt like she was divorced in his mind. And I don't really think that's the case because we were there for the knife and the kidneys rant. Just saying. Christine does agree with Isabel that it is moving fast. And McKelty brings up this lack of physical affection between Cody and Christine because they did have that agreement about, like, no affection in front of other wives. And Christine's like, no matter the circumstance, we just weren't physically affectionate. And she's like, how is that for you to see that change with David and I? McKelty thinks it's healthy. Isabel fakes a gag, but as it turns out, she hates PDA from anyone. And Peyton jumps in and is like, I'm happy for you. It's super weird. I'm happy for you. I'd just rather not be in the same room. But Christine points out, listen, we're going to kiss and hug in front of the kids. It's a whole new world for them. But she and David aren't really that worried about it, and she thinks that they might just need to get used to it. I understand what she's saying. It comes off a little flippant for sure, but I get it. Janelle points out that she and Cody actually were pretty affectionate, but she's uncomfortable with PDA in front of everyone else. And I'm with Mary when Mary says, there's a line. Don't be all get a room in front of other people. Because I think it's important for your kids to know that you love each other, but I also think that there's definitely a line in the sand. Cody then lies through his teeth and says he hated PDA because he had 4 wives. It was never quite right. But I remember an entire episode where you took Janelle camping for her birthday, and you were really angry about the quilts and the sleeping bags, right? And the majority of that episode was you telling us on and on about how PDA was so important to you. And Janelle saying that she really had to learn that and fix that. And then he giggles and he's like, I like it now, but Robin's very shy. Ugh. I will gag with Isabel. Christine questions Peyton and says, the other evening when you were over and David was here, and he laughs awkwardly like, it was so weird. And Isabel agrees with him. McKelty's the only one who doesn't think that it's weird, but Aspen knows Christine was looking for this from Cody, and she never really got it. And so now she's going to have this one person in her life she can have as much physical affection with publicly. And it was just an odd phrase. McKelty asked her mother, do you think this is long-term? Yes. Do his kids like you? And Christine lights up and starts talking about this date that his kids took them on to a chocolate place. And then Isabel lights up and is like, that's so cute. And there's this whole thing about a chocolate bar that none of us can see and trying it. Isabel has to leave for work, but Aspen stops her and tells her, listen, it's okay that you have feelings. And Isabel does say to Christine, you're going fast. That's okay. I'm willing to get used to it, but it's okay for me to need some time. And Peyton's like, listen, just because we're saying you're going really fast doesn't mean we're being negative. We're observing what's happening. Yes, this is going really fast, but we're not telling you to stop or slow down. And Christine laughs because she's not going to. And in his talking head, Peyton agrees with Aspen that arguably this is Christine's first real boyfriend, so he does think they're moving fast. It's okay. It's a new experience. But Christine tells her kids that she told David, you need to meet Janelle, you need to meet the kids, and he's on board. He'll meet anybody. And she's like, it's such a relief for him to understand polygamy. And she shares that they've said the magical words to each other, and it only took a week. And she goes for a high five from McKelty. No high five incoming. Even McKelty's mulling this over. You said I love you in a week? And Christine giggles. It was a week and a day. And McKelty looks absolutely taken aback for a second and was like, who said it first? He did. And then there's this over-the-top, what? He said it first? A little rehearsed. Thank you, girlfriend. Christine's like, yeah, he did say it first, but I said it right after. And Peyton wants his mom to be happy and safe, but he's going to withhold judgment until he meets David, which does sound really odd, right? Because we just heard them in the scene talking about how Peyton was there with them in the same room. Honestly, not some giant conspiracy in my opinion. I think it's just an editing move because they filmed these at a later date and you're not really sure where it's all going to slot in. So Peyton's couching his words, in my opinion, so that it could go where it needed to go. Christine does talk about meeting David's family, and she shares the story again about the cuddling at David's birthday party and how that this was how she knew he was the one because she'd never felt such peace and calm before. And I was more focused on whatever game Peyton and Avalon were playing, mostly because we've heard this whole story in the interviews, the wedding episodes, the one-on-ones, and in her talking head. Christine recalls this as being the most amazing memory and experience, and she says their heartbeats synced up and she realized she was in love with him. So then we get to go over back to North Carolina, and Janelle's doing this puzzle with Maddie and Caleb, and I do like a good puzzle, and I definitely feel like that's a Janelle-style activity, but they're discussing the purchase of property because they loved the land in Montana. Ultimately, we know this is not what they've chosen, but it is beautiful. And Caleb believes they just need to find the perfect plot so they can begin constructing their house. And Janelle's only reservation about the land in Montana really is the distance to town, that 40 minutes away. And she explains she, Maddie, and Caleb have the same long-term goal, and they want to have some land, have a hobby farm. She knows that they're never going to be real farmers, but this is a dream that they share. And so she's thinking some chickens, a garden. She describes the land in Montana as this quintessential Western property. She says it has this little creek, which is rare out there. Now, for my Western viewers, is that rare? I feel like we have a lot of creeks, ponds, and lakes here in the Midwest, and I kind of pictured that continuing on into the Dakotas and Montana. Maybe I'm crazy. Janelle shares that she told Cody she just wants him to buy her out of Coyote Pass. She thinks that he thought it was interesting, but Cody never takes action fast. And Maddie, under clearly no illusions, says Janelle should still, and Janelle's like, no, I'm still going to consult the lawyer. Good for her. Janelle gives us the skinny that on Coyote Pass. She says that she shares that Cody doesn't have his part of the money to pay it off, but Janelle does, and it's just sitting, waiting. It's all tied up, and she says Coyote Pass, and I swear it sounds like she says Cody Pass, which, being fair and serious, that's kind of what it is now. It's this lump of unused, usable land that Cody gets to lord over now. Janelle has suggested Cody just gets a loan and buys her out because she wants out. She tells her kids that being stuck in this apartment in Flagstaff, she's just ready. She's ready to pick out new furniture and settle somewhere. And at first I thought, furniture? That's your big thing? But looking back, Janelle's consistently settled for secondhand furniture or other people decorating and doing the choosing for her. She's in her 50s and she just feels like she wants to make some decisions by herself and not by committee. Not having to ask for a couch or a table, just making a choice and having it be her decision. And I see the appeal because as Janelle's recounting after this move to Vegas that she had this massive perspective change, she was done waiting for Cody. And I feel like Christine said something similar in season 16, but Janelle's like, if I waited for Cody, nothing would ever happen. So that is the first half of the episode, and a lot of it, I guess you could argue, might be filler because we've heard a lot of this before about Christine and David's relationship, and it definitely wasn't as meat and potatoes as the back half of the relationship. It just felt, it felt a little bit gravy here, but that's fine. So I'm going to get to filming the second half of this because frankly, I have so many things to say. This video would never end. So let me get to that, and I will see you guys real soon in the next one. Bye.